Good afternoon. For this strategic business consulting project, we will be analyzing Toys R Us and their operations. So a little bit of background review. Toys R Us is a chain of specialty retail stores. They offer toys, clothing, video games, and baby products. The company was founded by Charles Lazarus in 1957, with its headquarters currently in Wayne, New Jersey. The roots of the company can be traced to Lazarus's children's furniture store, which was originally called Children's Bargain Town. From there, he slowly added to the product variety due to customer requests, and eventually became Toys R Us. The company was first successful since it was considered to be a category killer, meaning that it thoroughly and effectively specialized in one sector, with this sector being the toy retail. The top brands available at Toys R Us include Mattel, Disney, Fisher-Price, Hasbro, Carter's, among others. The company did have a heavy focus on appealing to kids using Jeffrey the Giraffe. This company has also acquired several business ventures such as Babies R Us. And in 1998, Toys R Us began selling online through toysrus.com. So overall, the company has headed in many directions, but some of their strategies are no longer effective, and this could be the reason of their decreased sales in the recent years. So moving on to the current strategy in place at Toys R Us. They have a traditional brand recognition approach, meaning that they focus heavily on their brand recognition for sales. They do offer a wide variety of products. Some stores combine the Toys R Us product lines with the Babies R Us product lines, meaning that both the stores' products are available in one location. They do have a large focus on brick and mortar stores. They have a rewards program, a kids' birthday program, but they do have noticeably higher prices. So moving on to the Porter's Five Forces model. We start off with the intensity of rivalry, which in this case is moderate. Their top competitors include Amazon, Walmart, and Target. The bargaining power of buyers is strong. The main reason for this is because Toys R Us does not manufacture their products. Rather, they heavily rely on suppliers for their merchandise. The bargaining power of buyers, this is a strong force because most of the products found at Toys R Us can actually be found elsewhere. And in order for Toys R Us to be effective with their marketing strategies, they have to appeal to children and parents. Moving on to the threat of new entry. This force is actually substantially high. The main reason for this is because the cost to enter the market is very low. In other words, all that another company would have to do in order to be competitive to Toys R Us is to purchase a building and purchase some toys and just start selling. So there are really not very many threats. Not very many hurdles to jump over in order to enter the market. Moving on to the threat of substitutes. This force is moderate. Although there are no true substitutes for toys in general, there could be considered toys among the different functions or the different features that toys have. But general retailers can be considered Toys R Us substitutes, but they don't necessarily fit a different industry since they're both retailers. The difference is that Toys R Us is specialty, whereas the other ones are general retail. So moving on to the driving forces, these are external environmental conditions that drive change within a particular industry. So these forces shift and are beyond the industry's control. So in the toy retail industry, it is particularly important that these forces are analyzed because they do determine toy retailers' profitability and the likelihood of future success. Some of the significant driving forces in the toy retail industry would be as follows. So, the general population's reliance on technology for daily tasks. Um, so, in recent years, there has been an overwhelming increase in people's dependence on technology to help them with these daily tasks. Um, so, the bottom line is that people are using their mobile devices to make purchases on a daily basis. So, analyzing this trend could lead to effective ideas on how to best approach customers. Another driving force would be um, the changing preferences in toy functions. A lot of them are becoming technology focused. So there are many different types of toys in the market, and these have evolved throughout the course of time. So, for example, marbles and yo-yos used to be popular children's toys many decades ago, along with rag dolls and wagons. But today, most of the best-selling children's toys are actually higher tech. Children more often prefer toys that make sounds or light up versus the ones that don't have many technological functions. So, adjusting to these changes in consumer preferences could prove to be profitable to Toys R Us if their business strategies are properly adapted. Moving on to globalization, it is no surprise that globalization affects both revenues and costs in almost every industry. So, this would allow large toy manufacturers to cut down on their cost of operations and ultimately the prices of their products. These savings could trickle down not only to large retail stores such as Toys R Us, but ultimately to consumers as well. And the last one, shifting demographics. So shifts in population demographics is another driving force that can have a major impact on almost any industry. So in the case of Toys R Us, the shifts in age groups can have a big influence on sales, seeing as how their products and marketing efforts are geared towards a specific age group, which is children. Looking at key success factors. So key success factors are competitive capabilities that are key determinants of success in an industry going forward. So these forces are closely linked to the driving forces, and they are essentially used as company goals. So for Toys R Us, the key success factors would be to analyze and respond to changing population demographics, adapt company goals to changes in lifestyle trends. This would mean that it is essential for retail companies to pay close attention to these lifestyle trends because breaking these habits is close to impossible, and failing to adapt to these changing trends will surely bring significant economic stress. Analyze the strengths and weaknesses of competitors. Besides ensuring the products offered by the company are attractive to the consumer in price and functionality, it's also crucial to step back and analyze what makes the competition precisely that, competition. So they must be doing something right if their operations are effective enough to be considered a threat. Going on to take well analyzed risks. Those who do not risk do not gain. So this is an important concept for those corporations who seek to become affluent. The downfall of many profitable firms is that they become so risk adverse that they miss out on great business opportunities. The toy industry is forever changing, and if Toys R Us does not take a leap, they may be looking at losing customer loyalty and popularity. So let's take a look at their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So Toys R Us, the top 5 strengths would be high brand name recognition. So the name Toys R Us is very well known to the general population. It is very hard to find someone who does not recognize the name right off the bat. High market share and large product selection. So by having a large selection of toys, Toys R Us is able to give an is able to have an incredibly large market share. So in other words, if a child or a parent is looking to purchase a toy, they are very likely to walk out of the store with a purchase. Large retail locations allow for lots of shelf space. So this creates a high bargaining power for Toys R Us, and they are able to negotiate lucrative agreements due to this strength. Company history of charitable donations. Giving back to the community is always a great way to establish a good company image, and that is something that Toys R Us has been really great at doing. They have raised more than $55 million and over 44 million toys for Toys for Tots since 2004. Toys R Us implements high safety standards. So Toys R Us holds high standards for vendors and manufacturers when it comes to product safety. A good example of this is when in 2007, the CEO made a statement supporting law legislation on stricter toy safety standards. And a year later, in 2008, the company implemented safety standards that exceeded federal requirements. Their weaknesses, they have no sustainable competitive advantage. The brand Toys R Us is essentially the only source of competitive advantage. So there are very little factors that would increase repeat sales. Large retail stores in large numbers are equal to high operating costs. The size of the retail stores is massive, so combining this with a large number of stores leads to substantial operating costs. The close proximity to stores. This includes both Babies R Us and Toys R Us locations. In some instances, Toys R Us locations are very near one another and affiliated stores. Lack of product exclusivity. Most of the toys sold at Toys R Us are available at other large retail stores, such as Target and Walmart. They are not price competitive. So although most toys sold at Toys R Us can be found at other retailers, the prices at Toys R Us can be noticeably higher than that competition. Some of the opportunities, they have a positive response to the express locations, which were the smaller versions of Toys R Us stores that are opened in malls during the holiday season. So at these stores, there had to have been a smaller selection of toys versus the permanent locations. So success of these stores indicate that they accurately studied the market needs. They have a large selection, which creates increased sales potential. They also have toys internationally. So the high market presence could help Toys R Us maintain operations if effective analyses are conducted. Then we run into a little campaign or strategy that they used called True Transformation. And this strategy consisted of fixing foundational issues, such as like they wanted to improve shopping experiences and inventory management. And they also had a project called the Rooftop Solar Project. So in 2011, they announced that they would be taking on the task of covering 70% of the roof of their distribution center with solar panels. So this environmentally friendly initiative, it was also cost effective and a great opportunity for Toys R Us. So the biggest threat would be that they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which of course leads to a high sense of uncertainty. They are heavily dependent on final quarter sales, which means that although toys are generally purchased year-round, Toys R Us's sales largely occur during the fourth quarter of the year. And in fact, that number is 40%, which is almost half. It's astronomical. Then we run into a strong competition from large retail stores such as Target and Walmart. So although they are not specialty stores like Toys R Us, they do have price competition. Then we go on into increasing popularity of online purchasing. The way people shop has undergone major changes in the recent years, and online shopping has become increasingly popular. So, of course, this poses a big threat to a chain that has hundreds and hundreds of brick and mortar stores. The constant changes in toy features and functionalities. So even the simplest of toys have undergone changes. So like Barbie dolls are not only expected to come with an outfit of clothing or shoes, but now they come with puppies and they talk and they have so many different types of clothing. Um, and teddy bears can now be battery operated and sing and count and interact with more users. Going on to the financial analysis. So in this case, we will compare Toys R Us to Target, which is also a large chain of retail stores. They have comparable, more similar price points to Toys R Us than any other real retailers. And they offer similar selections from the same type brands. And they also have hundreds of locations nationwide. So in this financial analysis, a factor that could skew the results is the fact that Target is a general retailer, whereas Toys R Us specializes in toy sales. So this information does include their sales from other markets, such as like housewares and clothes and stuff like that. So the return on assets, it shows a percentage of a company percentage of profit that a company earns in relation to its overall resources. So Target has experienced fluctuating yet steady and recently increasing return on assets. But Toys R Us has experienced extremely high return assets in 2014, but not nearly anywhere as high as Target. The return on equity, it has been negative since 2014. It is not zero as in the graph, but it was the best way to represent it. The operating profit margin. So Target seems to have a considerably higher and more stable operating profit margin in comparison to Toys R Us. The gross profit margin. This shows the proportion of money left over from revenues for cost of goods sold. So both the gross profit margin for Toys R Us and Target seem to be very consistent throughout the years. The net profit margin. So something very noticeable about the net profit margin, as shown to the right, is that Toys R Us has had a negative net profit margin since 2014. And in 2013, it was only 0.3%. So this suggests that perhaps their operating costs could have been too high. Let's take a look at some strategic concerns. So after analyzing and taking a look at the company's background and current strategies, the Porter's 5 forces, the driving forces, key success factors, financials, and the SWOT analysis, I've come up with a list of 5 strategic concerns, and they are the lack of competitive advantage, lack of product exclusivity, high operating costs, failure to adapt to outside forces such as changing lifestyle trends, and the large number of stores in their inadequate locations, and the identical products offered at the subsidiaries. So the lack of competitive advantage. There is really nothing that makes Toys R Us stand out against its competition, except for the Toys R Us brand. They do offer a large variety in products, but Toys R Us is limited to selling toys and baby products, whereas general retail chains are not limited to one market. Rather, they can sell almost any kind of product to any person, regardless of age group. Lack of product exclusivity. So many of the products sold at Toys R Us can be found available at other stores such as Target, Walmart, or even Amazon. So a good example would be a Barbie Dream House, where that Dream House is considerably more expensive at Toys R Us. So the advantage that Target and Walmart have is that shoppers can find multiple products that they need all in the same store. High operating costs. The larger the shelf space, the more items it takes to fill those shelves and stands. The more items needed to fill those spaces, the more personnel are needed to complete those tasks. And the large buildings offer a big shopping space, but that also means that there will be more paid-in utilities and employments to help with the day-to-day operations. Failure to adapt to outside forces such as changing lifestyle trends. So the latest shopping trends include shopping online or using mobile devices, to be a little more specific. So people now, with the changing of the now households have two incomes versus one, where both heads of households work. There tends to be a faster pace and lifestyle. So many people find ways to cut down on the time that it takes to do some of these tasks. So they are turning more towards ordering groceries online and or from a mobile app and then picking up in store. So if these changing lifestyle trends were thoroughly analyzed, Toys R Us could launch an appropriate market um, their sales strategies um, that could eventually lead to a large growth in revenue. So the large number of stores, their inadequate locations, and identical products offered at subsidiaries. So as mentioned before, Toys R Us has hundreds of locations, and this number consists of both Toys R Us and Babies R Us and express stores. So like a good example would be there are two stores located in Madison, Tennessee, and they're actually located within 2 miles of each other. Toys R Us offers, that Toys R Us offers baby items such as cribs, bottles, car seats, and so does the Babies R Us that's located just down the street. So this is a prime example of unnecessary expenses and inadequate store placements. So after the thorough analysis on the Toys R Us, I have come up with 3 recommendations. The first one would be to restructure the product lines within the stores by making agreements with toy manufacturers and assessing the demand of products offers. So it's very important that Toys R Us makes product exclusivity agreements with some of their larger suppliers, such as Mattel and Disney, because they need to have a competitive advantage by having this product line exclusivity. So in other words, they must sell toys that are not available elsewhere. For example, although Mattel will never sell the rights to Barbie to one company, they could produce a specific line or variation of Barbie products that are exclusive to Toys R Us. The typical 3-story Barbie dream house may be available in numerous retail stores, but a Barbie ranch house or city-style combo would only be available at Toys R Us. This could be beneficial to both Toys R Us and toy manufacturers and suppliers. Having exclusive merchandise will still allow Toys R Us to keep their price margins while increasing their sales. Toys R Us will be the only one selling these exclusive product lines. The same could be done with other lines, not just the Barbie and Mattel. So this will lead a reduction to in-store sizes and consequently a decrease in operating expenses. These types of agreements could also reduce the cost of goods sold because toy manufacturers would be selling more units to Toys R Us in order to supply their hundreds of locations. The best way to implement the strategy would be to phase out product lines and restock with exclusive brands. This would be done by beginning with a few stores at a time in order to accurately measure strategy effectiveness. My next recommendation would be to determine the most profitable locations and close those with lower revenue. Since at this point, many Toys R Us stores are already providing a wide selection of baby products, it has been determined that the same stores that sell children's toys can effectively sell baby products. The best way to implement this strategy is to determine the top most lucrative locations in each state and close the ones with lower revenues. A good way to save the Toys R Us legacy is to rebrand. So restructure the company locations. Decide which locations are more profitable and reopen those stores as Kids R Us, keeping the iconic backwards R. So Toys R Us wants to maintain the brand recognition, but at the same time let their customers know that something is different, something is better. Most people will visit stores just out of curiosity to see what's new or what's different. Kids R Us will now offer children's toys from their favorite characters, but now exclusive to Kids R Us. The other side of the store will offer exclusive baby products. An Eeyore bouncer and an Incredibles walker can only be found at Kids R Us. So this strategy would give Kids R Us now a competitive advantage while increasing revenues and decreasing operating costs. My last recommendation would be to increase the focus on online sales. A mobile app will be rolled out for Kids R Us. Jeffrey will remain the company mascot as it has really grown on children in many generations. The app will allow for personalization of children's tastes. So parents will be able to input each of their children's birthdays, as well as toy preferences and ages. Parents will receive a coupon on their child or children's birthdays, and the app will give personalized suggestions to parents on what their children might like for their birthday, Christmas, or any random occasion. Parents will also be able to order Kids R Us products from their mobile devices and be able to curbside pickup at Kids R Us locations. Kids R Us should make a partnership with Amazon about having their products available for people who buy Amazon and Prime Now subscriptions or memberships. This would not only increase their footprint in the toy retail industry, but it would also decrease shipping costs for customers, making Kids R Us products more desirable. If Kids R Us partnered with Amazon and made their products available on Prime Now, consumers would be able to have Kids R Us on their doorstep within 2 hours of ordering. So Prime Now delivers in discrete boxes, which would make purchasing toys for parents much easier since they do not have to find somewhere for the kids to go while they shop for toys. Unlike the first agreement that Toys R Us made with Amazon, this agreement would not make Kids R Us the exclusive provider for toys, but just an agreement featuring Kids R Us products on their sales sites and apps. So one of the major company weaknesses, which is their strong dependence on final quarter sales, would no longer be such a big concern for the company because they are constantly reaching out to their consumers and personalizing their shopping experiences. So these recommendations are made with the intention of preventing Toys R Us from going out of business. If all internal and external factors are taken into consideration, these recommendations will increase sales and decrease operating costs, all while creating a strong competitive advantage.